Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
We're making new investments in the development of gasoline and diesel and jet fuel that's actually made from a plant-like substance. Algae. You got a bunch of algae out here, right? If we can figure out how to make energy out of that, we'll be doing all right. Believe it or not, we could replace up to 17% of the oil we import for transportation with this fuel that we can grow right here in the United States.
With algae. Joining us now, ladies and gentlemen, is Gerard, CEO of the American Petroleum Institute. And welcome.
Thank you.
So great to see you. Thank you for coming. All right. First of all, is that even, that was in 2012, February of 2012, so over 2 years ago already. I assume we haven't turned the algae into 17% of our oil yet. Is that even true?
Well, I remember that particular comment well. The reason I do is ExxonMobil had announced about 2 years earlier than that, I believe it was a $600 million investment in algae exploration and testing, and the president in that particular situation committed $17 million. My simple point is this: if you look about advanced technologies, if you look at emerging technologies in energy, the oil and natural gas industry leads in those. We have invested more than the federal government invests to get those breakthrough technologies. So we talk about an all-the-above strategy. You can look at the oil and natural gas industry. We're the leaders in it. And the same thing true for zero carbon emitting, low carbon emitting technologies. We're doing that. So this wasn't news to us. This was somebody else getting on our band saying, hey, that might be a good idea. We've been working on it for years.
So why, well, it's a kind of rhetorical question, but of course the president, the left, the media, oil companies are the boogeyman. They're evil. They get tax breaks. You know, only we get deductions, but you guys get loopholes. You have loopholes, you know. Yet, of course, you pay the oil companies in this country. How many billions of dollars do you guys pay in taxes?
We pay the federal government $86 million a day in revenue.
Wow.
No other industry compares with us in terms of the contribution we're making to run government.
Right.
And the return that we get on that is increased regulation, stymie, chilling effect LNG exports. So we've got to change this in the country. What's very positive, Steve, that's occurring in the nation today, 73% of the American people today will tell you they want more oil and natural gas development. So the public's with us. And now we've got to get the lagging indicators, the Congress and the President of the United States, to listen to the people, and let's take advantage of this and make America the energy superpower we could become.
Well, it's beyond Keystone. I mean, Keystone is a major, but there's much more. But talk about Keystone right now. This endless stalling is absurd and ridiculous. And now I read an article today, not a surprise, that the left is pushing Hillary to also come out against Keystone, which I'm sure she will.
Yeah. Well, I certainly hope not. It's very unfortunate. Many people don't realize we have over 81 pipelines today that cross the Canadian border with the United States. Canada is our #1 trading partner, including in energy. We rely on Canada a lot. We can become energy self-sufficient right here in North America in the next few years if we'll allow this relationship to continue to flourish. 90 cents of every dollar we invest in Canada to develop that energy comes right back to our domestic economy in the form of purchased goods and services. So when we look at things like Keystone, it's very disappointing. The president politicized this issue. There was no reason for that. We have broad bipartisan support in the Congress, both in the House and the Senate for it. 78% of the American people say, build the Keystone pipeline. But by politicizing this issue, it's sending a signal to our industry and others saying, well, we're not sure we want your investment in the United States.
Right.
At a time we need it most to create jobs, including the pipeline that the President's own State Department says will create 42,000 jobs, we're saying no. That's why organized labor is coming after the President.
Absolutely.
They're tired of this nonsense. We've got to make a decision.
Now, this President would also have you believe that, you know, and I don't know the exact quotes and the numbers, but, you know, there's been more exploration, more licenses granted than under all the years of George Bush. That's very misleading, is it not?
Well, not only is it misleading, it's untrue. The Congressional Research Service just a few months ago put out another report that shows of all the increase we've seen take place in the United States as we started to see this big energy boom, 96% of it comes from private and state land. The president controls the federal land.
Right.
And it's the federal land where we're seeing a decrease in production, we're seeing a decrease in permits, we're seeing a decrease in licenses. So when you look at the president's actual track record versus what he claims, he loves to take credit for the increase of oil and gas production. Unfortunately, his policies have nothing to do with that.
When you look at what the EPA has effectively done to the coal industry, and the president, when he ran in 08, said he would destroy the coal industry. He said, by definition, my policies would have electric rates skyrocket. He laid it out there for anybody who wanted to listen, but nobody wanted to listen. What do you think of as a man in your position when you see what the EPA is doing?
Well, what's interesting about where we are in the oil and gas space, I used to come from the coal industry. I know a little bit about those folks. They're good-hearted people. They're hard-working individuals, and we need to rely on coal in this country. We can clean up its environmental performance, but that's the way to approach these issues. Let's look at the challenges with each fuel, and let's deal with the challenges. Let's just not arbitrarily decide and pick winners and losers. You know, some in the administration wish we'd just immediately go to solar and wind. It's impractical. Our costs would skyrocket. We wouldn't have the lights we have today to run the place. It's just impossible. So when we look at that as an industry, we're somewhat heartened. Why? Because the president, even though in the start of his administration, called us yesterday's energy in his State of the Union, the most recent State of the Union says, hey, I'm all for oil and gas. In fact, let's start expediting the permits. The reason I believe that's happening, the American people are onto this. The American people see this unique American opportunity to become a superpower, to become energy self-sufficient, to create hundreds of thousands well-paying jobs, and I don't think they're going to tolerate policies that stymie that potential.
And I think it's important to also talk about the double standard here, and you could speak to it better than I, because your industry has been innovators, as you pointed out, and I think it needs to be got out there more how you are innovators in energy conservation and what you're doing, and you're leading the front, and the president, as you said, is catching up and talking about it. But you know, the windmills are killing birds, killing American eagles. Birds are dying and getting burnt to a crisp by the solar panels in two ways. One, there's one kind of panel that's like a laser, and it burns the feathers, and they can't fly, they crash. Another one creates a pool, and you probably know better than I. It looks like a pool when they're flying on the roof, and it's, you know, I don't know, 1,000 degrees, so they fly into it thinking it's water, and they burn up immediately. Yet, that's okay, and they get a pass, but farmers can't get water in California for their crops if a smelt, an endangered species of smelt, is going to be affected. I mean, that is mind-boggling.
Yeah, well, there's clearly a double standard in a lot of this, Steve. In fact, the unfortunate thing is the president talks about an all-the-above energy strategy, but then he talks about his favorites. He wants to pick the winners and losers. That's not the way to run the country. Don't interfere in the market, Mr. President. Let those energy sources that are most efficient, that are most low cost to the consumer, come forth and let them be our sources of energy. That's what we find. Here's another great irony. If you look at where the United States is today, we're leading in terms of reduction of carbon emissions on a global scale. We're at a 20-year low. We're off about 10% down from where we were before. Why is that? Had nothing to do with policy. Had everything to do with increase of natural gas production. Cleaner burning natural gas. We're now creating more electricity with it. We're fueling operations with it. So if we'll step back and quit interfering in the market, trying to pick winners and losers and pick political friends, let the market take its place. That'll benefit consumers, it'll employ a lot of people, and we'll get a true all the above, but it will be for the benefit of the American public.
Do you also fear with a president who, you know, put out that report on climate change, basically, which is what they call it now, and basically they said, just open your window, look at the rain, look at the snow, climate change, can't deny it, and the debate is over, and he'll act if Congress won't. Do you fear that the regulations, the limitations, possibly a tax of some sort, whatever he could get away with, will be debilitating not only to your industry but to the economy?
Well, I think the reason the president's going it alone, as he's often said, he's going to take his pen and go all by himself, is because he doesn't have the support of the Congress. He doesn't have the support of the American people.
I agree.
They don't agree with him.
But it's not going to stop him, though.
Well, and that's one of those questions. What authority, what ability do we have to stop this overreach in some ways of the...
That's a whole other issue, I know.
It really is, and that's for the lawyers to sort out. But I think what's important here, Steve, is the minute he starts talking about, we run in and remind them. It wasn't Waxman Markey. It wasn't some scheme that the Congress came up with, driven in many cases by shrill elements of our society. What it was good old ingenuity and technology, and the energy industry, specifically the oil and gas industry, that's developed the ability to reduce carbon emissions. That's the path we should stay on. That's the demonstrated, proven path, and not some philosophical conversation about who's right or who's wrong.
We got 30 seconds. You optimistic looking ahead?
Well, I think what's going to happen is the country is going to continue to support more and more development of this resource. And I think many of the politicians are going to have to get aligned with the American people, or they're not going to be public officials for very long. So I'm confident, as always, the American people will do the right thing. It's just a question of how quick we can get there.
Jack Gerard, pleasure
Steve,
to see you. Thank you so much for coming up. Very educational and interesting. All right, folks. What's next? Oh, yeah, I think Gimme 5 is actually next. You know you're not going to want to miss that. You know it, you love it, and you've got to have it. So keep it right here on Newsmax Television, and we'll be back with Gimme 5. And I promise you, you'll be glad you did on the Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax Television.